All right, good morning. Today we are going to talk about emotional intelligence in the context of your peer coaching role with the Public School Academy Scholarship. So in the previous session, we talked about what emotional intelligence was not. Today, we're going to get straight into what emotional intelligence is. The reason this is important right now is because emotional intelligence isn't something that's just set. It's something that can be fluid and changeable. So for example, your emotional intelligence, let's say scores, can drop during times of transition. And it's not ironic that we call this the public school transition program because coming to college is a transition. Moving away from home is a transition. Experiencing your first breakup, losing a loved one, dealing with a pandemic, failing a course. These are transitions. These are things that may be new to someone and they have to learn how to navigate this territory that they've never been in before. So emotional scores can drop. They also can go up when peers and people are coached about ways to identify their emotional intelligence, realize, be aware, and get strategies. Those things can go up. And we know this isn't about a score, but this is about a healthy lifestyle. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, I want to pose some questions. I want you to think about, are you able to identify and label your own feelings? Or are you confused and overwhelmed by your emotions? Are you able to recognize not just what you're feeling, but what caused that particular feeling to hit you the way it hit you in the intensity that you're experiencing? Can you even predict how you're going to react and respond in certain situations? When I was younger, or people would be in class and they'd say, okay, you're going to make me catch a case. And what that meant in my particular culture was somebody was doing something that was getting on somebody's nerves so bad that they were pushing them to a point that they were going to trigger them to act or quote unquote come outside of themselves. Do you know how you feel about you? Not what people say about you or have said about you, but how do you feel about you? Are you aware of your strengths and weaknesses and not having this inflated belief of who you are? Are you trying to make improvements? Are you on a path? Because those are all parts of self-perception. Now let's talk about self-expression. Yes, it's the ability to express yourself, but specifically to express yourself assertively versus aggressively. Can you take into account the ways others are going to understand and perceive you? Can you stand on your own opinions, your values, and the things that you need? Can you advocate for yourself without being aggressive or passive aggressive? Can you express your emotions openly without embarrassment or shame or guilt? Can you operate independently? Do you know your goals? Can you follow your goals and not feel overly influenced by somebody else? How many times do we hear from the students that we coach that the reason they selected the major they selected is because that's what their parents wanted them to do or what another person told them might be a good idea? Can you make plans and decisions autonomously without relying on somebody else? All questions that we're going to pose to you, but then as you work with your student, questions you can pose with your students. Interpersonal relationships. What is this? In this domain, we look at empathy, trust, compassion, social responsibility. Are you able to connect with other people's emotions and experience empathy, not sympathy? Can you experience that empathy without becoming burdened? And this is hard, you all, or challenging by another person's emotions or struggles. Can you maintain that separation between who you are, how you're feeling, and then what they're feeling and who they are, even when experiences are similar? Are you able to build and sustain healthy, mutually fulfilling relationships in respect and trust? You're not using them, you're not being used. Mutually fulfilling, Something is coming out of the relationship that's a benefit to both parties. Do you contribute to your broader community, or is everything just about you? Do you slow down and think about how it will impact other people? That leads us to decision making. As you solve problems, are you aware of how emotions impact your decisions? Because a lot of times we're not. A lot of times we'll go through something and we see everything through one perspective. Are you able to sit back and just look at what happened outside of how you feel about it? Are you able to control your impulses? Can you defer gratification to make a measured and effective decision? And when we are working with ourselves and working with others, that can, maybe gratification is just staying in the bed because you don't want to go to class because it's cold and it's warm in your bed. But can you look at both sides and make a decision on what is an effective decision? Stress management. Talking about your flexibility and your ability to cope and to be able to maintain optimism in the face of a hot mess. Is your natural reaction, and we all know ourselves at some point, you know how they use the example as the glass half empty or half full. When you look at things, how do you naturally see them? Because that's going to impact the amount of stress you put on yourself. Having a negative perspective on everything. So as we continue to talk about people who have this high emotional intelligence, this isn't like studying for the SATs. Let's look at some things people do who have a high emotional intelligence. They spend time reflecting on their behavior. They look at the responses of others and how people are responding to what they're doing. And they use that for curiosity, not rumination, not beating themselves up, not rehearsing the same old story, but really reflecting back, not being judgmental on everybody, but really just reflecting what happened when I did this or when I chose not to do that. People with high emotional intelligence have a strong sense of their own intuition. Some people describe it as your gut. Go with your gut. They are real clear at naming their own feelings. They're able to predict how they might respond and react in certain situations. And this is good because there are certain situations you won't put yourself in if you really think about how you know you're going to react based on where you at, based on your emotional capacity right now. It's some people emotionally you can't be around right now because you're going to be open to the stuff they say that's going to hurt you and wound you, and you haven't built up something to be able to, a force field to block that yet. So you need to know, oh, I know who I can deal with, and I know who I cannot deal with at this time in my life. Every person isn't for every moment. Be realistic in your self-appraisal. One thing I know that some of you observed when your students were taking their wellness assessment, some students had this extremely high self-appraisals. They could do everything. Yeah, in August, when we were going through transition camp and they had to have one class yet. And then first semester of college punched them in the face like it does. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with some of the choices they made. But they had this inflated self-appraisal that they could just, with minimum effort, produce these maximum results. We have to think about how to live our values with conscientious goal setting and be realistic. People with high emotional intelligence also, they welcome feedback. Some people you can't tell nothing because everything they want to be defensive about it. Well, you shouldn't criticize me. You shouldn't judge me. This is actually just feedback. You may want to read the rubric before you write your essay. You may want to brainstorm some ideas. This appears to have been rushed because according to the assignment or the syllabus, you needed 450 words. You wrote 300. So some helpful feedback is you need to make the minimum requirements on an assignment and clearly read them before you start. And perhaps reread them at the end to make sure you've done what you need to do to earn the grade you're trying to earn or to acquire the information you're trying to learn. Some people can take that, some people can't. You have high emotional intelligence, you can take constructive criticism because you see that as an opportunity to learn, improve, and grow. Another thing people do with high emotional intelligence is they take responsibility for their own feelings. And an example of that would be they use I statements. Now, well, you made me, no, and nobody made you do nothing. You chose to, or you reacted. So if you want to say, I feel such and such, I feel like you were not listening. And because of that, I walked out. Now, well, you made me leave. And nobody made you leave. You need to validate others' feelings if you have high emotional intelligence. So for example, that could sound like this. It seems like you're feeling really frustrated. Can you tell me more about why you're feeling that way? You're validating their feelings. Instead of you saying, well, I don't know what you're so mad about, as that's no big deal. How you gonna tell somebody else what they're going through is no big deal? It's not your deal, but it's theirs. Pain is not a competitive sport, but it still hurts. So whether I have a paper clip, it doesn't help me for you to say, oh, that's just a paper clip. It's not a big deal. That ain't nothing. Well, it may be something to me. So we want to make sure we validate others' feelings. Also, you want to make sure you're using your feelings to make decisions that are helpful. So you may feel one way, but then you need to stop and say, okay, this is how I am feeling. But then I want you to think about each option to the decision you're going to make. Because your feelings shouldn't be making the decisions for you. They inform and give you awareness of where you are. And truthfully honest, depending on what you're really feeling, you might not need to be making any decision at that moment. I heard someone say, never make a mountaintop decision when you're in the valley. That's not the time to be making breakthrough decisions. When you just failed an exam, that's not the time to decide you want to change your major. That you don't want to come back to school because you still hurt from failing your exam. You need to process and deal with that. You don't need to make any major decisions at that time. Having a sense of humor about yourself also is an example of high emotional intelligence. You all, some stuff is so crazy, you just got to laugh it off. I mean, you just got to, like, you're going to do some stuff so just out the box, some stuff that's so just, when you look back, you're going to be like, wow, I don't even believe I did that. That right there, yeah. Glad that was not on tape. Okay. But look at the long view. It's a page in a book. It's a page in a chapter in a book. You know, a book that's a part of a set of volumes. I mean, your life is so much bigger than some of these moments. And some of these moments you have to just laugh about. Because some of it, when you look back, it's just like, okay, wow, really? Okay. Get up early to get there on time, go outside, the car got a flat tire. I'm not gonna stand outside and cry because my car got a flat. I'm gonna look at it and be like, wow, this really today? Okay. And then I can do about it that tears are gonna help, but I can't say, okay, let me call campus safety to help me out. Let me call, maybe I got, or maybe I have something where through my cell phone, I can hit something and they'll come help me with auto protection. Or I have a friend who can come out here and support. You know, you start thinking, but there's no point in you beating yourself up or being mad at the air. Also, be careful about this one. If you have high emotional intelligence, your responses will be more assertive than aggressive. Okay, so let's pretend. Let's do a pretend. Your friend is frustrated with you, and you can tell they're frustrated. You body language, you can tell. So you go for it. You say, okay, what's going on? What's wrong with you? And this is what your friend gives you back. You always wake me up when we come home late from the library. When you come home late from the library, it's like you don't think about anybody but yourself. I'm tired of it. Okay, all right. Keep it in mind, this statement is you do come home late. So assertively, you can say, oh, I could tell you really frustrated about that. I didn't realize I was being so loud to the point where I was waking you up. Can we talk about what will work better? Now, an aggressive comment may sound something like, oh, for real? Well, at least I go to the library because I care about my grades. And besides, you go to bed at like 10 o'clock. So you want the whole world to stop and everybody tiptoe and be quiet because you decided to go to sleep at 10 o'clock? The world don't stop at 10 o'clock. I pay rent just like you do. So you need to quit tripping. It is not that serious. Now, a passive aggressive comment is not a comment at all in most cases. Is they done said something, now you mad. Instead of saying something back aggressively or being assertive and acknowledging what's really going on, you continue to be late. And when you come in, you extra loud. You stomping, shutting doors, dropping book bags, turning on TVs. You really doing it now. They call it passive aggressive. When I was growing up, they call it being petty. Now you just being petty. Don't be petty. So what I want you to think of is how you're responding when you look at your emotional intelligence. Because it has nothing to do with, oh, I'm smart emotionally. It has everything to do with how you are responding to yourself and to others for the good of yourself and for others, what you're aware of and how you're managing that awareness for others, your benefit and the benefit of others. So let's do an example. Your friend says, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have 2 papers due this week. I got a midterm. I cannot get all this done. This is a lot. I don't know. Now, in the previous lesson, we talked about active listening. So here are some steps. Stop what you're doing. Pay attention to your friend. Make eye contact. Show that you're listening with your body. Turn toward them. Connect with what your friend is saying and remember, validate their feelings. So it sounds like you're pretty stressed out. That is a lot in 1 week. It's no wonder you're feeling overwhelmed. An example of not listening is when you continue to be on your phone or looking at your computer screen. It's when you say something like, oh, for real? Or, oh, yeah, I know. I got 3 papers in the quiz too. It's like my professor's not even trying to help me at all. Stuff is, it's a lot going on too, right? That's an example of not listening. You just started telling your own story. Active listening is you let the story stay with the person. You're listening and validating what they're saying. The conversation stays about them you're supporting. Not listening is when you're not really honestly paying attention. You pick up a little piece of it, only enough to attach your own story with it. And then the person still feels left unheard. So as you think about as a peer mentor, we're going to stop right here. But I want you to think about some of the things that we talked about today in reference to how can we apply some of these things that we talked about with the students that you are working with. Noting what type of emotional intelligence they may have and what type you have, and being able to have the capacity to help support, encourage, have empathy and validate them. All right. Look forward to having you at the next one.